and welcome back to RC Icons. So in today's video we're going to build a Dynastorm. That's right. I'm excited about this one. I was looking through, I had pulled out, where do I start? So all of my kits are in storage. They're not necessarily with me in the house. I do film from the house, but there's just too much to have here. So I've got a secure place that's off-site that I store a lot of my kits at. Really, all of my kits. That, and when you start talking about the value in the collection, it's too much to warrant having everything here. So I was at my storage pulling out the decals for the TD4 Black Special. So I used original Tamiya decals on that car. And in the process, I have 3 Dynastorm kits. So I have an original and then I have 2 rere. So the method behind my madness with that is that the original will stay new in box as part of my new in box collection. And then I've got the 2 reres. One will get built as a Dynastorm. That's what we're doing today. And then the other one will get built as a 211 tribute car. I really want to get it as close to a 211 as possible, but they only made 100 of the 211Xs, and to get your hands on one is like, forget it. It's probably never going to happen. Although I thought the same thing with my Boost, and I was able to finally get one of those. So I'm not going to say never, but the chances are it's not going to happen. So I do have one rere kit slated to build up some kind of a 211 or a 211 tribute. And I know it's been done on YouTube before. I know Glenn's done one. Yeah, it is what it is. But so the Dynastorm. So I saw the kits sitting there and I was like, in my mind, I've got the World's car on my mind because that body set just came in. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to build them back to back. I'm going to do a World's car, and I'm just going to do like a little two-wheel drive series here with 2 different cars from 2 different companies. So we're going to do the Dynastorm first, and then probably the World's car right after it. So this car is going to get built exactly the way it is. This kit is absolutely mint. The box is mint. So just a little history on the Dynastorm. I'm a little bit torn with the box art thing. It's okay. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Some people hate the Dynastorm, the looks of it, like the color scheme. But I think, you know, it's just one of those where I'm not a huge fan of the super astute color scheme either, but I kind of want the box art for what it is in the behind the glass. So it'll probably end up getting done box art. So, little history lesson here. Now, all this information comes from Tamiya Base. I don't want you guys to think like I'm an encyclopedia when it comes to RC cars. Like, I do have a pretty in-depth knowledge of them, but dates and all that stuff, it's not just sitting in my head. So, in researching the Dynastorm, so the original kit came out December 8th, 1992. So, we are... By the time this video airs, we're probably right there at 30 years. So that was the other reason I wanted to build it. So we're about 30 years to the day of this kit being released. So it was released December 8th, 1992, just before Christmas. And I think Tamiya, you know, was trying to use Christmas as a way to push this out there. But the problem is they charged so much for the kit that they didn't have real high sales right off the get-go. So this kit was an expensive kit. It was 30,000 yen back in 1992, which was it was quite expensive. It was 6,000 yen more than like the Nissan NP 98 maybe, the Group C car. And it was more than the Terra Conqueror. Now the Terra Conqueror was plastic bathtub chassis. This is FRP. But the Terra Conqueror came with the Dynatech 01R, and this didn't. The original didn't even come with a motor, right? So it was an expensive kit. And I'm not going to say it didn't have a lot to offer, but there wasn't a lot of sweeteners in the kit when it came. It wasn't fully ball raced, although there are ball bearings in there. So that's part of one of the differences between the original kit and the rere, and we'll get into that in a second. So the rere came out October 31st, Halloween, 2001. So Halloween 2001, they decided to rere it, and I believe, and I may be wrong on this, but I believe that it was the second rere that Tamiya ever did. The XR 311 was the first car ever reread back in, I think, 2000, late 2000 or early 2001, and the Dynastorm was the second car ever reread, and we have not seen it again since, right? So we have not seen the Dynastorm rere in 19 years, which is why when you see a Dynastorm new in box for sale, whether it's a rere or an original, they're huge money, just because the rere came out, whatever, 21 years ago. So it's just one of those. I'd love to see it come out again, but at the same time, you know, as a collector, I'm happy if it didn't. But it would allow a lot of other people to get it. So usually I'm more in line with letting reres come out, and they are what they are, and that's fine. So 21 years since it's been released. So differences between the two kits. So the first kit back in 92, it didn't come with a motor. The pink Acto Power had been released previous to that, to the release of the Dynastorm, and basically what they said was, you know, that was the optimum motor for the actual kit. So if you wanted the pink Acto Power, you needed to go out and buy it separately. So not only was it an expensive kit, but it didn't have a motor that even came with it, right? So people were kind of turned off with that back in 92, which is why they didn't sell a whole lot right from the get-go. Obviously, it's a two-wheel drive racing buggy. Probably the best two-wheel drive buggy, best two-wheel drive non-TRF buggy Tamiya ever did, in my opinion. So it has the MDC slipper clutch in it, just like the Dyna Blaster that we just did, whatever, a month and a half ago. So we'll be building that up again. But basically the differences between the kits. So the two kits. So the first one didn't come with the motor. When they reread it, they put a pink Acto Power in there, but it's a non-label, and it's the 14-turn rotor, Acto Power rotor, and a super stock can. So it's not fully modified like the original Acto Power. And people were, you know, it got mixed views. Some people were happy to get that pink motor with no label, and other people, you know, were put off and thought that the original Acto Power should have been put in there. So Tamiya actually did make a third pink can motor. Again, no label. Some people think that the third motor had a label. The third motor did not have a label. It was a 14-turn motor in the original Acto Power can. So it was fully adjustable like the first one. And it's actually considered to be the first rere Acto Power motor, that's wrong. The first rere Tamiya motor ever. So the Acto Power motor itself had been discontinued 9 years earlier. And then when they reread the car and they came out with that motor again without the label, it was the first rere Tamiya motor done. And they have not produced any of the Acto Power motors with the label since then. And then that third motor was only offered at special Tamiya events in Japan. So it's not like you could go somewhere in a hobby shop or whatever and order that third motor. It's super, super rare. It does not have a label. So if you're looking for like an Acto Power motor today and you're on eBay and you see one with the label on it, with the box, that's probably an original Acto Power motor, unless someone took one of the number 2 or the number 3 motor and threw a MCI label on it and put it in an old box. That's the only way you could really fake it. But then you would see that there's no timing marks on the can. So So that's it. I mean, from what I can tell, that's it. The third motor was only offered in Japan at special Tamiya events. It wasn't something that you could buy, and that's why it didn't have the label on it. Tamiya had never came out with a third motor with the intention of selling it in large scale numbers for the general public. It was more of a publicity thing for their special events, and so. Typically, you see the number 1 and the number 2 motors. You see the original Acto Power motor, and you see the one that came in the kit that's unlabeled, that's got the super stock can on it. So the difference between the actual kit and the rere kit is a whopping 6 bearings, I believe, 850s. So the steering assembly in the original kit had 4 brass bush 850s, and in the rere kit they put in 850 bearings in the steering kit. The rear diff had I'm gonna say 1 but possibly 2 850 brass bushes in the original kit, and those went to 850 bearings in the rere. And then the MDC clutch has a bearing on the inside in 850, and in the original kit it was a brass bush, and then the rere they changed that brass bush to a bearing. So in the original kit you got whatever it was, 6 brass bushes for the steering, the rear diff, and the MDC clutch, and then the rere, those went to actual ball bearings. Those are your differences. That's it. Nothing else. So if you were to get a rere, it's actually better than the original because they changed those bushes to bearings for you, but nothing else changed. So it's actually one of those where the rere is really just as valuable as the original, and where the rere is now 21 years old and hasn't been, another run done of it since. Those numbers stand firm, right? It's crazy what these things run for. If you can get one for under 900, it's a good deal. Built 500 would be a good deal. They usually hover between 6 and 750 built. I would expect that to be in good condition. You might find a battered one for 350 or 4. But as far as like a new unboxed kit, like a kit like this kit's like flawless. Perfect picture, no scratches. That's going to be 900 and up all day long. It kind of is what it is. So let me bring the camera over. I'll show you the kit real quick in its presentation, because I love doing that. And then we're going to tear the sucker open and start building it. In commemoration of 30 years to the day that it was originally released. December 8th, 2022 is just around the corner. Let me bring the camera over. All right. Look at that box. Absolutely stunning. So this is the sticker that would tell you that it was limited release item. This reissued kit almost completely reproduces body and chassis of the original kit. Transmission equipped with full ball bearings. So it does state that transmission had that bearing change. And then here's your chassis, your Teflon sleeved high caps in the blue. So it still has that Acto Power labeled motor as being the hop-up option. I don't know why they would show a high cap damper set on there. Some people think that it comes down to opinion. Some people say the high caps were better than the Teflon coated high caps. I believe the Teflon coated ones were a little bit longer too. The blue ones, they might be a little bit longer. And then of course it shows the CPR unit. Now this is showing the CPR unit. This is the same thing Glenn ran into. What car was he looking at? The Lancia Rally that I sent him. It showed the standard CPR unit with, it showed the Dynatech O2H, which is what, 13 turn or, yeah, 13 turn. And this had a 18 turn limit, I think, on it, or maybe even a 23, right? So now it's showing a 14 turn motor with that same CPR. So it would need the CPR, the 160, not the 100, to be able to power that motor. So it looks like Tamiya did that on a few kits, where they showed, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't dictate or show which CPR unit it should be, but the 160 has the gold heatsink on it, or the brass heatsink on it. So I don't know, just a little bit of useless information, I guess. So when we take the box cover off, we've got our kit presentation with our blister packs. Our FRP chassis and body is in the middle, and then all of our parts trees are over here on the side. And then somewhere in this mess will be the pink Acto Power non-label. There it is right there. So here we have the non-labeled pink Acto Power. Again, the 14 turn rotor is in there, but that's just a super stock can painted pink. Running the universal shafts, the UJ's in the rear. Of course, there's all your bearings. You've got parts of your MDC, your 23 tooth pinion, and then your FRP front and rear damper stay. And then obviously the Dynastorm has that very unique rear travel shocks, or front dampers. We've got our build manual, our decals, our body is stapled to the backer with the chassis below, and the FRP top plate, rear brace, and then we've got all of our parts trees, which there actually isn't a whole lot. I mean, there's not a lot to this kit. You've got your side plates for your chassis, your battery box, front bumper, gear case, front and rear arms, shock parts, more shock parts, MDC, and your wheels and tires. I mean, that's really it. And the Dynastorm runs the true Spire Spike tires from back in the day. Nowadays we have our square spike, but these are the real Spires. Very sought after nowadays for people working on Top Forces or Top Force Evolutions, trying to get those real tires. So I'm gonna get this opened up, not that there's a whole lot to open, and I'll bring you back here in a second, and we'll get started building this sucker. I love days like today. There's nothing like building brand new kits. Love it. See you in a second. Alright, we're laid out. So that's what the body was covering up. That's your other, I guess you'd call it, blister pack. I wish they would still do stuff like that, but I get it. So as we open the manual to step 1, first thing we're going to be doing is getting the chassis put together with the side plates, front bumper, battery holder, and then we're going to immediately be working on the steering. So I'm going to start getting some of this together, and then it's the front end as well in step 6. So I'll start getting some of this together, and like I usually do, I'll just bring you back in segments as I build it. And you guys will get to see it build. See you in a second. Alright, so we're making some progress here. Chassis is built up and steering is in. So I'll show you in the directions what we did. So we fit the two side skirts for the chassis on either side. We got the rear suspension pin in, front bumper went on, and then the steering assembly needed to be built with those 4 850 bearings that changed from the original to the rere. And that gets us through step 5. So the only thing I didn't do, I didn't put the Velcro on yet on the outside, because that, I mean, you can do that just before you put the shell on. So chassis sides went on, rear suspension mount went on, battery tray went in with the clips, the front bumper, and then we built up the steering. And we installed the steering, and we don't have to grease these shafts anymore because we've got ball bearings in there. So now we're going to start building on step 6, the front uprights. And then it immediately goes into that beautiful FRP front shock tower with the upper arms. And then the arm assembly goes in. And then it all gets mounted to the chassis in step 9. So I'm going to continue to push through. I'll probably bring you back just before I bolt this up. Maybe I'll bolt that up on camera after it's all put together. And then it immediately starts getting you into the rear. One nice thing about two-wheel drives is they go relatively quick because there's not a lot to them. But bring you back in a second. Alright, so as promised, I've got the front clip built and ready to go. So we're going to get this mounted to the chassis. It went together awesome, as always, with Tamiya. Everything just fits. So it's got 2 screws that go into 2 press nuts. If you've ever built an Astute or a Super Astute, you'll know what press nuts are. They're a little round, almost like a blind nut that locks into the chassis. That's a press nut. I'll show you in a second where it goes. And 2 more self-tappers. Locks it in. Almost there. So that front is on with that steep rear angle. The steering arms snap into place. Alright, smooth as silk. So that's the front end, essentially, short of the dampers. So moving on to step 10, we're going to start building the rear end. It's all familiar to me because of the Dynablaster, but it's exactly the same with the rear suspension bar plate, rear arms, and then it gets into building the ball diff and getting the MDC clutch put together. So I am going to press forward, and I will bring you back here at some point to show you what's on. Alright, so that's it with the rear arms on. They feel a little bit tight. I didn't grease them. This is more of a shelfer. It'll run once. So it's a tight fit to get the C-clips on. It's almost a struggle, to be honest. You have to really pinch those rear arms in to get to the groove to get them on there, and that's why it's so tight. So I don't even know that grease would really help, but So the next step, step 12, is building the ball diff. So we'll get that ball diff built with the special ball diff tool. And then I'm going to get into the MDC, which is an awesome clutch. And now that I ran a Dynastorm, I actually know what I'm doing as far as adjusting it in. So we will keep pressing forward. It's going to be hard for me to really show you a whole lot, so I'm going to get that all built and into the car, and then I'll bring you back before I start with the rear shock tower, and then getting the rear uprights and stuff fitted. So I'll see you back here with a fitted gearbox. So we just got to step 18. The MDC is built. The diff is built. Everything feels super, super smooth, as you would expect from a Dynastorm. Step 18 is going to be to get it fit to the actual chassis. So we've got our motor cover. It's going to go on. And then we need a couple of our slugs. So these are going to slide down in. BC2 3x10. 2, 3 of those. 2 of those. Oh no, 1 of those. And sorry, I know this isn't making for a great video. I probably should have dug these out beforehand. Those 2 there. The only bronze ones on the whole rear end. So this sits like this. The only 2 bronze or brass screws on the whole bottom of the chassis. And we've got our motor plate. Tapered one on this side. So that's step 18 done. We're on the car. So this is a 0.4 module spur. I don't know what the number is on it. They give you a 64 pitch, and they give you a 0.4, which is more like a 48 DP. Obviously, with it being a race spec, they give you a couple different options. So step 19, we're going to start building the rear shock tower. So I'll get that put together and probably fitted to the car, and then I will start building the uprights, and I'll bring you back at some point here. But we're getting to the end of it here. A few more steps and we'll be to the shocks, which is essentially the last part short of putting in a servo. See you back in a second. Alright, so we just finished step 23. So I built the rear shock tower. There's a bracket, and then there's the battery plate bracket that also supports the bottom of the shock tower. So you have this FRP piece under here that the metal piece bolts to, and then this sandwiches through that into the chassis. So we got the shock tower on first. Then I built the rear uprights, which is pretty easy with the UJs. You just slide them through the uprights with a bearing on either side in a E-clip. Holds it together. Build the two upper arms, and then in step 23 we get it all in place. So there's a couple of spacers with the pin with an E-clip on either side. Snap the upper arm on. Nothing earth-shattering there. So at this point, rear arms are on. They feel great, and everything is buttoned up in the rear end as far as like the motor cover. All the screws are in at this point. Nothing better than a brand new build. Look at that FRP chassis. Just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm glad I picked this one. So we are at the point where we're building some Teflon coated blue high cap shocks. They're not high caps. I can hear everybody in the comments. They're high caps with a Teflon sleeve that are like 2 mil longer. Everything else about them is essentially the same. The gaskets are different underneath and up top because of the Teflon coating. The bore is the same. Everything else is the same. So it is what it is. So we're going to get the shocks built. We'll get them on the car. And then all we have left is the top brace, or the upper deck, and servo. Big deal. Wheels and tires. So at this point, I'm just going to finish the car, and I'll bring you back with a finished chassis. Not really a whole lot left to show you, so I'm not going to build the shocks on camera, that's for sure. See you in a second. Alright, so I'm just about done putting the shocks together, but I figured I would bring you back for a second to show you. So everybody knows the Dynastorm is Teflon coated, or Teflon sleeved. That's your Teflon sleeve. Right, so it just slides in. And regardless of whether the piston is in or not, there's your Teflon rod guide at the bottom. So regardless of whether the piston is in, that sleeve can come out. Right? It's just, that's the whole principle behind it. That's the difference between this and a traditional high cap. And then on the Dynastorm, all the shocks are the same barrel length. So that's a front, that's a rear. There's a spacer in the front so that it doesn't have as much throw. There's no spacer in the rear. And then the front is a 3-hole piston, and the back is a single. So obviously the back is going to have more weight with the motor and the gearbox, and the the battery is more situated towards the back. But these are now ready for oil. And then I can get the springs on them and get them on the car. So I figured I'd show you back, to bring you back just to show you the Teflon. I'm going to get these oiled up, wait for some bubbles to clear, and get them mounted. See you in a second. Well, that was awesome. There's that iconic Dynastorm rear angle. The camera doesn't do it justice. It sits way back. There you go. Right? And then travels backwards. One thing I am surprised at, for this being such a high-end two-wheel drive buggy, no anti-sway bars. The diff is great. So smooth. Something clanking around in there. I did have an extra bearing, so I think I'm going to have to open that gearbox up. Got something going on somewhere. But I got plenty of time. I still got to do the body, so I'll figure it out. We'll get it sorted. Sitting a mile in the air, I'm probably going to take the shocks back apart too and lower this thing, because it is like, it's got to be 1.5 inches at least. So this is a Proline bottle of paint that fits underneath it. Right, so it's definitely a mile in the air and could suit to be more like that for me, for when it's on the shelf. But yeah, it was an awesome build. I mean, you just can't get any better. Brand new Dynablaster. Absolutely gorgeous. So it's ready for some running gear. The track on it is insane. So yeah, next video will be the body shell, and then a running video. Let me move the camera over for a closing. I guess I'll show you real quick what we did, but the video's long here. So all I did was I built the shocks, mounted the shocks, skipped past putting the motor in. So that's the shocks mounting. No big deal there. And then all it was the upper plate, chassis brace, and then mounting the wheels and tires. And then the battery strap. Big deal, right? That's all you missed. Nothing major. Let me move the camera for a closing. So yeah, that was pretty cool. First Dynastorm I've ever built or worked on. So I built the Dynablaster, but in all honesty, it's completely different. So everybody says the Dynastorm is the same chassis as the Dynablaster, and that really can't be further from the truth. So it's the same from here back, and that's it. There's nothing the same about the front end, obviously, because the other one's a stadium truck. The other one has a small section of FRP, and then it's a plastic tub chassis. So the chassis is essentially completely different. It's really, like I said, from here back is the same. And then the front uprights might be the same, but that's it. Everything else is completely different. I don't think they share the same front shock tower. I really don't. They don't. The other one, the Dynablaster has black CVAs. This has the Teflon coated high caps. So, but yeah, super enjoyable. Messing around with the MDC clutch again, the UJs, the ball diff. It's just super smooth. And like I said, I'll have to go back in that gearbox. I missed a bearing somewhere, so I'm not sure where, but I got to get a bearing in there. I can hear something just kind of clicking around just a little bit. Not a big deal. That's what happens sometimes when you're building, and you're building for video, you're not really paying attention. And then I definitely, looks like I missed a couple of screws right here. But again, that's not a big deal either. So yeah. Next video will be getting the body done. I'm still kind of torn between the box art, but I'll probably end up doing it box art. And then we'll get this bad boy out for a run. Although with that being said, winter's hitting here in northern US, so I am in the middle of getting running videos done to carry me through the winter. I just don't know that I'll be able to get this one out before that happens. So it may end up waiting till spring. But regardless, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next video where we finish the body on this baby. And then let me know in the comments what you think of the Dynastorm. Some people say it's the best non-TRF two-wheel drive ever. I kind of agree with that, although I haven't run it. But you have to remember that this superseded the TRF 211X, which was supposed to be, you know, concept race buggy from 1990, 1991. And then shortly after this, it probably wasn't even shortly after this. It was probably 2000. TRF 201 came out in 2009, I think, or 2010. So you figure that's almost 20 years. There really wasn't another two-wheel drive competition buggy that Tamiya offered. In the four-wheel drive side, they they were still moving on with the DF01s, and they were carried on to the TL01Bs, which is supposed to be a pretty robust chassis. We've got one of those to build, but in the two-wheel drive car or world, really not a whole lot. The DTs, DT02, but not even close to something like this. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Give me a thumbs up. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks.